Let's talk to someone who I'm pretty sure will have pretty strong views on this, and that's Holland Kaye, who's Chief Executive Officer of Heathrow Airport. John, good morning to you. I say good morning, but really very, very upsetting news, I think, for an awful lot of people wanting to go on a holiday, and even worse news for the many, just huge numbers of people in this country whose jobs rely on people travelling.
Well, you're absolutely right. People tend to think about aviation, flying as a way of getting on holiday, but it's far more than that. There's probably about 4 million jobs in this country that rely upon aviation. Think about all the inbound tourism, the education, but most of all the exporters and the manufacturers who rely on getting their goods around the world. And the way they do that is on passenger planes from Heathrow. And if those planes aren't flying, then their goods are not getting to global markets. And you can see the impact of that in our monthly figures that came out today, with our cargo volumes down over 20%. Now, that is a real shock for the economy. The goods that we're exporting and the goods we are importing as part of our supply chain are down by so much. And you probably think that there'd be more of that at the moment with our ports, our seaports chock-a-block with goods because of Brexit. More goods would be being flown into the country, but that's not the case. And so this really is a wake-up call that unless we get aviation moving again soon, the economic recovery is going to stall.
Yeah. And this is the thing, isn't it? It's very easy for us to look at it as just our individual holidays, and we know that an awful lot of people who love their finger pointing saying, "Oh, well, you're just selfish. You want to go on holiday." But as you've discussed with us many times before, again, it's not just the jobs as well. It is the fact that those planes that are carrying passengers often carry huge amounts of cargo. Those planes are not viable without passengers. You can't export, you can't import if there isn't the plane to get it in and out on.
Yeah, you're spot on. And this is really important to people's jobs all across the country, that we get planes flying again. And today, for Monday, particularly when these new rules come in, our borders are effectively closed. Very few people will travel. I think you have to be desperate or very wealthy to get on a plane. And so there'll be far fewer flights going as well, far fewer ways for our businesses to get their goods overseas to export them, to fulfill the orders that they may have already met. And that is something that we may need to do in order to protect against these new variants around the world, but it can't last for long. And what we're looking for is a flight plan out of this. When the Prime Minister announces his roadmap in 11 days' time, what's the plan for getting our aviation market open? What's the plan for getting our borders open again? Because we are a very international, cosmopolitan country. We cannot continue as we are without our borders being open again. So I don't expect that to happen straight away. Of course, we've got to get through the peak of this health crisis and protect people's lives. But there must be a plan that in April, May, June, our borders will reopen again and we can get people travelling.
And the key thing is you've been asking for things like the PCR testing before people get on planes and when people get off planes. You've been asking for all of that for months. And there are many countries that have been very successful at tackling the pandemic who have been doing that. And a lot of people would understand, it's a cost of doing business of going through an airport as long as they can actually travel. But it seems to me that travel, holidays, travelling on airplanes has become almost the bogeyman of this pandemic. It's a really easy target for a lot of people who couldn't afford to travel, weren't planning to travel, too scared to travel, whatever it is, to point their finger at people. We even had people pointing their finger at Captain Tom and his family after Captain Tom Moore and his family went to Barbados in December. 100 years old, having a warm summer holiday. He raised £33 million for the NHS. Seriously, people, take a look at yourselves. But he was being trolled on social media for doing that. It's very easy for people to sort of use this as the bogeyman. But the evidence in terms of the risk of people flying on planes, and if people are tested, as many other countries have been doing for a long time, there's really no reason to stop that sort of level of travel.
Well, you're quite right. And just to remind you what the rules will be from Monday, you will have to take a test to make sure you don't have COVID 3 days before you try to board a plane. And you won't be allowed on the plane unless you have a valid certificate. When you get here, you'll be required to quarantine for 10 days, and you'll have to take a test after 2 days and another test after 8 days. So that's 3 tests you have to pay for and be in quarantine for 10 days, possibly at a hotel that you have to pay for under government control. Now, that really is closing our borders and is not sustainable. We know that there'll be a point in time when people are able to travel again, whether on holiday or on business. So how do we step back from these very tight controls, which may be absolutely required right now, to something which is more like normal trial. And I think testing or demonstrating you've had a vaccination will be part of that. But that should be something that you can do before you even get on the plane, so that you can be confident that no one else on the plane has COVID, and that the country can be confident that nobody is bringing COVID in.
Yeah, I have to say, with my last flight, I say, bored everyone's pointless out of this, but having to wear a mask. People want you to wear a mask, fair enough, that's what you have to do. Cost of doing business, 8-hour flight, people stayed in their seats, people, they ate their meal, put their masks back on. Social distancing in the airport, on the planes, of course, we know the air is replaced constantly, it's safer than being on a train or a bus. And everyone who got on that plane had a test. I just didn't feel for a nanosecond that anyone on that plane was at risk, and of course there's no evidence that anyone has done. And yet, as I say, this has become the bogeyman. But the key thing here is, even if forget people's holidays, okay, people can say that's a luxury, but actually, it is a key part of people's life and what makes their lives worthwhile. Going back to the point you made at the beginning, that 4 million jobs rely on aviation. Our economy is very different from, say, the Australian economy or the New Zealand economy, where they can just close their borders, allow no one in, no one out for a year or goodness knows how much longer. Our country, we're on the periphery of Europe. We are an international travel hub. We are an international business hub. So much of our economy relies on international tourism, and when that does start again, we need to still have those hotels, those restaurants, all of those services for them to. And the reality is, closing down effectively air travel puts all of those at risk. So it's not just people not going to Spain on holiday in the summer. It's the possibility that the restaurant down the road also closes down as well.
You're absolutely right. I went down my local high street yesterday, and it was shocking to see how many shops and restaurants and pubs were boarded up. And it didn't look like a temporary thing. They were gone for good. And that is a tragedy. Those are real people's jobs that have been lost. People who won't be able to afford to go on holiday because they haven't got any security, any financial income. This is where we need to protect people's livelihoods as well as people's lives. Now may not be the time to reopen our borders fully, but it won't be long before we will want to do that. And I am quite hopeful that there will be a summer, that we can save people summer holidays, because I would hope that once we are confident, and increasingly we are confident, that the vaccines that we have are proof against some of the variants that are coming through, as the level of incidence come down in the UK and vaccination goes up, which is only weeks and months away, then we will be expecting to move around our country again. Absolutely. And people will be saying, why can't I go on holiday now? Absolutely.
I really hope they are. John Holland Kaye, keep fighting the good fight, Chief Executive of Heathrow Airport. I mean, this is the thing. Emma Revel, just bring you back in on this. We are seeing, deaths have fallen a third since mid-January. The death rate, the case fatality rate in people over 80, where people who actually would have seen the first people to get the jab, and people where the jab's effects after 3 weeks are clearly being felt, their death rate has fallen by so much more than the death rate of under 80s, that there's no reason that could be anything other than the fact that they have been vaccinated. Cases down more than 70% from the peak. Huge evidence now that simply having the vaccine stops you not just from getting hospitalised or dying, which is what the purpose of it was, but also from getting infected, from being able to infect other people. The evidence of the vaccine is not only the fantastic rollout, all credit to the government and the NHS for getting that done, but also that it is having even more of an effect than they'd ever hoped. And yet so much doom and gloom still. That's the bit I don't understand.
Yeah, we need to be looking at the positives, which are very clear when it comes to the vaccine rollout. This is going well, and I think I think after a year of this pandemic, British people especially are very reluctant to say things are going well because we're not used to it. But it is okay. You can say it. It is going well.
Yes, well done. Yes, it's very un-British, but we're going to do it, folks.